I'm going to do a very, very brief introduction. I'm Deborah Davis. I'm on the faculty here at Yale. I'm in the Department of Sociology, and I'll be the mediator. I'm going to say very little background about the event, how it came to be, and who is on the panel, and how we plan to go forward for the discussion, because this is very much an opportunity for discussion. Just quickly, Mingbao Media Company, which is our focal concern here, one of several, is the flagship, is a conglomerate based in Hong Kong. The flagship daily is Mingbao Daily, which was established in 1957 by Louis Cha. And it has a official circulation of about 100,000. It, in fact, reaches a much broader audience than that through online version and people forwarding articles from Mingbao. In addition to the daily, the corporation also does Mingbao Zhoukan, which is published once a week, and also Yazhou Zhoukan, which is also published once a week. It represents a very, very important position in the media landscape of Hong Kong. Those of you who are here probably have read it. Those of you in the audience who may not have read it will I think of it as sort of as the intellectual piece, and some persons have even said it's the newspaper of record and have made and equated it with the New York Times. The particular event that brings us here today is the attack on the recently dismissed editor-in-chief. That's Kevin Lau. Kevin Lau was born and educated in Hong Kong. He went to Shuyang College, some of you may be familiar with, and then he also did graduate work at LSE in England. He was a personal assistant to Martin Lee, and between 1995 and 2007, he wrote editorials for Mingbao Daily regularly. He assumed the editorship, he was editor-in-chief in January 2012, and he was dismissed January 6th of this year. They've already had 2 subsequent editors since then. But the event that has brought us, I think, all to this room was a violent attack with a cleaver in broad daylight on February 26th, 2014. Mr. Lau survived, but he has been severely injured and is in rehabilitation. So this is the brief background which brought us to this. And I want to thank not only the staff from CEAS and all the staff from Luce, which have come together to make it possible. Abby Newman is here, and we thank her very much. And also Nicholas Frisch, one of our graduate students in the MA program here, who will be going on for his PhD, who has also written for the Mingbao Zhoukan when he was working in Hong Kong. And Nick's official role today on the panel would be as a translator for KANG Zhengguo. Very briefly, we have 4 faculty and former staff members who are here from Yale, who are going to briefly speak to the issue, and then we'll open it to questions. To my right, on the very end, is Tom Kellogg, who is at the China Law Center and now is I want to get the exact title. You all have bios with more detail, but for those of you who don't have the bios in front of you, Tom is now the director of the Northeast Asia program at the Open Society. Next to Tom is Professor Zhiwu from SOM, School of Management, where he's in the Department of Finance. Those of you who know Zhiwu's writing know that he is interested in a broad range of issues. Libel has been something he's written about, and he knows a great deal also about Hong Kong's place in the world of global finance. To my left at the end, Nick is immediately to my left, and at the end of the table is Professor KANG Zhengguo, who is professor of Chinese in Yale's Department of East Asian Language, a published poet and writer. His remarks will be in Chinese, and Nick Frisch will translate. Our plan is that ask Shirley, who I'm going to now introduce, is our last presenter, who is speaking to us from Hong Kong. And you can see her on the screen, and I hope you can see us where you are. Shirley Yam has been working as a political and financial journalist for major newspapers in Hong Kong since the 1980s. Among them is the South China Morning Post and the Hong Kong Economic Times. She writes a weekly column for the Post. China's corporate reform has always been a focus of her interest. Since 2010, she has been serving the Hong Kong Journalists Association, the city's only independent reporters union that campaigns for press freedom and provides professional training. She is currently the association's vice chairman. Shirley was born in Hong Kong, educated in Hong Kong, mainland China, Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom, and has a master's in politics and world economy from LSE. So we've asked Shirley to be the first to make comments. Shirley, I will try to, you can't see me, but we would like to, if you could just keep the initial one to about 10 minutes. Would that be all right?
Thanks, Deb, for the introductions. Instead of the violence on Kelvin, whom I know for decades, I will bring attention to the intangible violence that Hong Kong journalists are facing every day. It's a bit difficult to talk about press freedom at risk in Hong Kong because it's protected by the basic law. And we don't have an official censorship in Hong Kong, and it appears as if we can still, as everyone, I mean, people are free to speak their mind. But the reality is quite different from the general perception. Is just yesterday we announced the city's first press freedom index, which stood at 49 out of 100. That is according to a poll done by the Hong Kong JA with the cooperation of the University of Hong Kong. And that is far from a satisfactory score. And that polling was done before the chopping of Kelvin Lau and the sacking of another critical commentators. So that 49 score has yet to reflect the general, the public sentiments caused by Kelvin's attack. And in fact, with the poll among the journalists are even worse. I mean, the score is only 42. And because what journalists are seeing is we've seen the resignations of respectable editors, the sacking of them, banning of certain academics by certain newspaper for being too liberal. Say columnists were told not to write politics so that the paper looks tidy, or a commentary that is saying no will be twisted to say yes instead. This is the things that we see every day. And all this happens to be against a backdrop where over the years the ownerships of our media gradually transferred from traditional media families to tycoons, or people whose income source remains really murky. Let's speak more about the tycoons, because for the tycoons, it's interesting that why would they want to own a newspaper? I mean, most of the papers in Hong Kong are not making money anyway. The most profitable one is only about 10 million Hong Kong dollar, which is somewhat around 100 million Hong Kong dollar, which is about 10 million US dollar. That's a peanuts for our tycoons. I mean, they can easily get that from their day trade in the stock market. And what's interesting is it's not just the tycoons are jumping on the media bandwagons. We see new players joining the rank, despite a shrinking audience and the competitions from the internet. We're going to see two new TV channels coming up next year, and another broadsheet paper will be launched in summer. So all this, the investment by the tycoons and the increase in the numbers of media simply cannot be explained with the financial results. So the big question is why. So one explanation will be media is always about influence. It's not about influence in Hong Kong, but that will be a great leverage for them to have influence in Beijing. So therefore, it's not a coincidence that most of the media owners have some sort of political appointments or be given some grand medals in mainland, and most of them had huge personal business in China. And for this bunch of newspaper or media owner, it's not hard to guess what will they do as the political tensions between Beijing and Hong Kong increase. And as the new state leader spells out a tighter control over Hong Kong in its recent reports on Hong Kong, and also as the Occupy Central movement is now set a deadline to this completion of control, not just over the media, but over Hong Kong as well. So it is again all this backdrop that we are seeing. That's all the increased occurrence of self-censorship in Hong Kong. So what we're seeing now in Hong Kong is, yes, we have an increasing numbers of newspaper, TV, and radio stations, but with a reducing diversity. And we are seeing just today, less than 10 hours ago, more than 20 members of the news management, newspapers, TV stations, and radio, they queue up in Beijing to shake hands with the country's vice chairman, who told them to speak out against the Occupy Central movement. And then the result is also the turning of press freedom into a taboo, in the sense that when I personally speak to, at the phone-in program of the radio, talking about how the Hong Kong Journalists Association are going to speak to the secondary school students about what is press freedom, and the host was asking me, "So you are brainwashing our kids, aren't you?" So that's what we mean by that. This is the situations of press freedom in Hong Kong, where it is not even okay to talk about press freedom. And that's quite hard to imagine for a free society or free economy like Hong Kong. Say, I do understand some of you may say that all the things that I've been talking about are nowhere compared to the suppressions in China. And some of you may even say that since you can still speak your mind, it's not that bad, isn't it? Well, but to that, I would say that, I mean, do not compare our situation with our peers in the mainland. Compare our situations with what you are enjoying now as a members of a free society. And to a media of the world's model free economy, to quote Friedman, what we're experiencing is worse enough. Thank you very much.
Shirley, for the others will speak, and then for the questions, come at the end, and some will come from this room in which we're sitting, and others will be sent by email. And I'm just going to repeat that for those of you in the audience who may not have it in front of you. It is yale.hongkongmedia@gmail.org, and that's Yale with an uppercase and Hong Kong HK is with uppercase. And when you send in a question, and also for the audience, you should identify yourself, your affiliation, and then to whom you wish to address your question. So next, Professor Zhiwu will speak. And
thank you, Debbie. Of course, as an economist, probably you wonder why I'm speaking on this panel on press freedom in Hong Kong. To me, of course, freedom is sort of like air that we usually don't appreciate the importance of until we don't have it. When you have been, if you have been to Beijing during those bad air quality days, then you realize how important good quality air is. So press freedom is just like that, especially for Hong Kong. So, of course, because other colleagues on this panel will address press freedom issues from other perspectives, let me just stay on the economic side. So this is something Actually, I have spent quite a few years doing research on, with some articles published and still some long papers not published. Almost 10 years or 12 years ago, I started to ask this question, is press freedom economically important? Because we realize that press freedom has always been treated as a political institution, and not so much an economic institution. From my research, I think even for the US economy, so roughly the year 1900, it's sort of like the turning point. Before that, press freedom was more important for political reasons. But after that, then for economic reasons, press freedom is equally important. Why for Hong Kong, press freedom is particularly very critically important? It has to do with at least two background pieces of information. One is for the Hong Kong economy, so roughly 88% of the Hong Kong GDP is from the service sector, especially including the financial service sector. So that's a very important background to keep in mind. The second background is just over the last few years, especially, Hong Kong has been facing a lot of competition from Shanghai and across the border from Shenzhen and Beijing, because as the Chinese society and Chinese economy have been opening up more and going more in the financial development direction. So Shanghai has always been viewed as a real threat to Hong Kong as a global financial center. So recently, at the Boer Forum, I also addressed this question: how should Hong Kong face the competition from Shanghai and other mainland cities in order to keep Hong Kong's global financial center position? So of course, there are many different answers to this question, but my focus has been on the press freedom and other institutional quality side. So for Hong Kong, press freedom is fundamentally important because, as I said, 88% of its GDP comes from the service sector, and very importantly, critically from the financial service sector. First, let me give you some quick statistics just to highlight why there is this connection. Okay. According to my research, out of 107 countries with press freedom ratings back in 1990, recently, if I divide the 107 countries into three equal size country groups, according to their press freedom ratings back in 1990. So those 1/3 of the countries that have the highest press freedom ratings have the service sector contributing on average 62% to their GDP. Whereas at the other end, the non-press freedom countries, then the service sector share in their GDP on average is about 48%. So the middle countries indeed have their service sector share lying in the middle. Okay, and then on the financial market side, if I use the stock market to GDP ratio as a metric, then countries with a free press have much better developed stock markets than countries that do not have press freedom. So I don't need to bother you with too many specific numbers. But the key point is because the service sector trades intangibles, whereas manufacturing, mining, and agriculture all produce and trade tangible goods. So when you have intangibles being traded, first you have to know how to price them, right? And secondly, you have to know whether you are being cheated or not, whether you can trust the information provided by the producers and sellers and so on. So this is why in the case of China, when everyone knows there's no real press freedom, China can still develop the Chinese economy over the last 35 years or so. Partly because when what China makes for the most part, right, are those tangible things, then the buyers and sellers do not have to rely on informational institutions or newspapers to evaluate the quality and the truthfulness of the products and so on. So you can actually do some extra work, just like when you buy a car, right? You bring your friend who is a mechanic who can tell you whether the car is good or bad. You don't need to be an expert, or you don't need to rely on the information being disclosed by the seller or the manufacturer. You can do your own homework. But that's a luxury you can have when you buy and sell or make tangible goods. But when what is bought and traded, right, is a financial claim. It used to be, of course, stock certificates were in paper form. You could get something delivered physically in a paper form to state that you are a shareholder in company XYZ. But today, you don't even get a paper stock certificate or paper financial contract. So when what is being traded is totally intangible, so information, the quantity of information and the quality and truthfulness of information become very important. Of course, the unbiasedness it also becomes very important. So this is why, not surprisingly, for financial market development and more generally for services, the free flow of information is fundamentally important. So it's no surprise that for Hong Kong, after adjusting for income levels and many other things, press freedom still stands out as one of the most important determinants or drivers of financial market development. So, of course, if you're interested, I can show you my very rigorous econometric or statistical regression analysis to get down to whether press freedom is just a proxy for something else. But I can tell you, especially for an economy like Hong Kong, when everyone's, or at least 88% of the employment comes from the service sector, and when people's livelihood in Hong Kong depends so much on the service sector, so press freedom is not only important for political reasons, but more importantly for employment and livelihood reasons. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
不要读清的，你介绍了啊。我今天的发言题目是港人的自由与中共对它的利用和侵蚀。谈到香港这个城市，我首先联想到两种人物：多重间谍和公共情妇。前者向不同的老板出卖情报，后者给不同的恩主提供爱情。
My subject today is the Chinese Communist Party's use and erosion of Hong Kong's freedoms. When I think of Hong Kong, the first thing that comes to mind is two personality types: the double-crossing secret agent and the kept woman with multiple sugar daddies. The former sells intelligence to multiple bosses, and the latter gives favors to various patrons.
我为什么要如此比拟香港这个城市呢？众所周知，这块土地早在1840年鸦片战争后就割让给英国，对老旧的中国来说，这是个耻辱。但就这块土地本身而言，它却获得了被放弃和出卖后的自由。
Why do I use this analogy for Hong Kong? Everyone knows the speck of land was ceded to Britain after the Opium War in 1840, and it is a truism in China that this was a great national disgrace. But for this speck of land itself, it achieved the freedom that comes from being abandoned and sold out.
从此以后，英国人在那里建立起公司、银行、教会、报社、法院、警察局等一大批旧中国都没有的机构，形成了这块土地上特有的社会文化生态。在这一中西杂处的城市群落中， 中国传统的民间社会逐渐与西方的公民社会有机地搅拌在一起。
After that time, the English established companies, banks, churches, newspapers, courts, police, and a great number of institutions that did not exist in the old China, which became part of Hong Kong's unique social and cultural ecology. In this dense community's intermingling of Western and Chinese influences, Chinese traditional folk society and Western civil society could move towards an organic synthesis.
回归前的香港人并非真正的英国公民，回归后的香港人也算不上标准的中华人民共和国公民。香港人曾被殖民的身份，反让他们获得了对一党专政的豁免，而曾受大英帝国强暴的经历也补偿给他们足以使自己区别于内地人的身价。
Hong Kong people before the handover found themselves not being proper citizens of the UK, and after the handover found themselves not being proper citizens of the PRC. Their colonial history earned them an exemption from the one-party system after the handover, and their unique experience of British imperialism and oppression under it gave a feeling of aloofness from mainland Chinese.
香港人缺乏国家认同的这一畸形情况，使他们的社会和地盘特别具有吸附力和包容性。那是一个藏垢纳污、也卧虎藏龙的地方。三教九流在那里各得其所，左右中间各派在其中都有足够的空间发言证明。比如有亲共的大公报、文汇报，偏右的苹果日报，以及持中立立场的其他报纸，其中有以明报为知名。明报除了在大跃进、文革、邓小平重出政坛和8964事件期间在中国用最好的记者网络，还利用月刊和出版社为知识分子提供一个重要的平台。我那本回忆录，我的反动自述，及该出版社出版。
Hong Kongers' lack of a more specific national identity made their society very tolerant and able to absorb others' cultures. This provided a unique opportunity to shelter disreputable people, but also play host to those with a talent, unrecognized talent, like a hidden dragon. And people from all walks of life could find a place for themselves in Hong Kong, leftist and rightist. There were many pro-communist papers. There were Beijing skeptical papers. Most famously, there's Mingpao, besides the Mingpao daily newspaper, that had a very good network of correspondence inside China during major events like the Great Leap Forward, the Cultural Revolution, 1989. Mingpao provided an important platform for intellectuals in its monthly magazine, and also published my own book, his book, in their publishing house, Confessions.
我们现在在此谈论香港的媒体自由，首先应该看到这个自由赖以建立的基础，那就是英国人曾经建立的制度和留下的遗产，如司法独立、港人治港、自由贸易，特别是香港人真正拥有言论、出版以及游行、集会等自由的权利。由于香港特殊的地理位置及其缺乏国家认同的中性特征，这诸多自由从一开始就潜在着被利用和滥用的危机。它不只被跨国公司、投机商人、文化掮客以及黑社会所利用，也一直为共产党所充分利用。
In Hong Kong's freedoms, we should discuss the basis of those freedoms, including aspects given by the British judicial independence, the policy of Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, free trade, and the rights of free speech. The special situation of the colony and lacking this particular national identity gave it a neutrality, but these freedoms were also open to abuse and exploitation by not just multinational companies or investors or cultural brokers, but also gangster mafia societies. This is something the Communist Party has always taken full advantage of.
对共产党来说，在不同的时期，香港的吸附力和包容性及其诸多自由有着很不相同的意义。在1949以前，香港是中共逃犯的避难所、地下党潜伏的基地，是为支持中共的武装斗争而募集款项和偷运武器等物资的中转站。
For the Communist Party, Hong Kong meant different things in different times. Before 1949, Hong Kong was a safe haven, underground base of operations in the civil war against the Nationalist Party, a place to fundraise, a place to a way station for weapons and materiel.
最近爆出丑闻的华润公司就是中国地下党1949前在香港搞起来的。总的来说，中共在武力夺取政权的整个过程中，都极大地利用了香港这个贸易和媒体均相对自由的阵地，搞了很多只有在那里才有可能搞下去的颠覆活动，而且很早就埋伏下红色势力的党羽，种下了侵蚀港人自由的祸根。
For example, the Huarun Corporation, the China Resources Corporation, that's recently been in the media due to the Songlin scandal, was a Communist Party underground front before 1949. And it was important in building the party's strength during the Civil War. The party engaged in many activities in Hong Kong that were only possible in Hong Kong as opposed to the mainland or Taiwan. And they early on established a good network of agents in the city that planted the seeds of the future erosion of Hong Kong's freedoms, even while taking advantage of them.
1949到1997又是一个特殊的阶段，与其说中共在夺权后没有能力收回这块割让的土地，不如说中共暂时还不想收回。对中共来说，巩固和扩张他们的党权向来都比维护国家的主权重要得多。
After liberation, 1949 to 1997 was also a key stage. It's not that China was militarily unable to retake Hong Kong, but in fact they preferred not to. Instead, the party preferred to consolidate its own domestic power more than make a nominal play for protecting national sovereignty.
特别是在冷战时期，保存住香港这个通往自由世界的跳板，最便于中共的势力渗透到台湾和西方，去勾结可以收买到的各种势力。为了谋取多方面的利益，中共宁可把这块土地暂时抵押在港英当局手中。
Especially during the Cold War, Hong Kong was the Communist Party's gangplank or drawbridge to the free world, convenient for ideological work, a place to connect or with or purchase every kind of influence. And so we could think of Hong Kong as being mortgaged to the British temporarily.
比如地处跑马地投注大堂旁边的新华通讯社香港分社，好多年来都在新闻自由的掩护下建立起中共反西方、反台湾的前哨阵地，使香港成为中共向海外进行宣传的最佳窗口。
For example, the Xinhua New China News Agency Hong Kong branch, which is just next to the racetrack, the gambling center in Happy Valley in Hong Kong, operated under the speech protections for ideological work. And Hong Kong was the optimal vector for party propaganda towards the outside world.
香港传媒的境遇在1949前与1949后的不同之处在于，49后的中共不但利用香港的传媒自由对香港实施掺沙子和挖墙角的活动，而且开始使用他们已经建立的专政机器残害香港媒体的从业人员。早在50年代初，就有6名香港报业的编辑和记者在广东被捕，随即以所谓文化特务的罪名遭到枪杀。
After liberation in 1949, the Communist Party continued to exploit Hong Kong's freedoms while also using its own mechanisms of authoritarianism to target Hong Kong with subversion activities. There was an incident in the early 1950s where 6 Hong Kong editors and reporters were arrested in Guangzhou, just north of Hong Kong in the mainland. They were charged and convicted as cultural spies and shot on the same day.
从49号的97前，中共对港人自由的威胁主要是煽动港人的爱国情绪，制造反西方、反民主社会价值的动乱，利用劳工阶层的不满推销中共的意识形态。文革期间，红色风暴也一度扫荡香港，红卫兵曾嚣张到要解放香港的地步。有一位商业电台节目主持人名叫林彬，就因批评极左土共的暴行，在上班途中被土共的黑恶暴徒纵火烧死。当时《明报》总编查良镛在暗杀名单上便名列第2，因为他写社论批评了北京当局。
From 49 to 97, the party's other threat to Hong Kongers was its ability to stir up patriotic sentiment, in some cases using the laboring class's legitimate grievances to promote its ideology. There was cultural revolution violence in Hong Kong. Some Red Guards wanted to liberate Hong Kong. There was a commercial radio host named Lam Bun who had criticized local activist violence. He was killed, burned to death in his car by local communist sympathizers. The editor-in-chief of Ming Pao at that time, Louis Cha, was number 2 on the hit list because of his critical editorials.
左派与右派的斗争从此加剧，港人与港英当局的斗争受到中共势力的渗透和偏导，这一切都给中共势力的寄生和侵蚀造成了浑水摸鱼的便利。
As the struggle became more intense between leftists and rightists, Hong Kongers' own legitimate struggles against unjust aspects of British colonial rule became manipulated by the Communist Party.
如果说97前港人的爱国爱港、爱港爱国还回旋着亲和大陆的情调，那么97之后，爱港与爱国便出现了分裂。
If Hong Kongers before the handover had a love Hong Kong and love the country attitude that allowed them to be affectionate towards the mainland authorities, after 1997's handover, loving Hong Kong and loving the country began to diverge.
从前对祖国的亲和来自对港英当局的拒斥，回归之后，港人却感到他们的自由和福利日益受到中共党国的威胁。中联办现在就是北京伸进香港的黑手，它分化香港社会，操纵特区政府，从黑帮一直收买到立法会，用生意优惠、政协之类的政治荣耀、权力分享等各种利益拉拢本地的亲共势力，而且放纵太子党红二代进入香港占领经济要津，为中国特色的全球化战略铺垫平台。
Their previous patriotic feelings were more of a rejection of the British. Afterwards, the Central Liaison Office of Beijing has been a divisive presence in Hong Kong, exercising informal influence over the government, from the mafia underworld to the Legislative Council. It uses preferential business treatment, political honors like appointments to the People's Political Consultative Conference, access to power, and also Hong Kong has become a place where the wealthy children of high-ranking party members do a lot of business and occupy strategic sectors.
与此同时，中共以十面埋伏指示对香港的自由传媒展开封杀。中共现在最大的本钱是拥有收买整个世界的资金，对香港媒体，他们首先采用名利收买的手段，软化媒体老板，让他们自动封口。如果收买不动，就加以恐吓，乃至暴力对待。最近刘进图遇刺案就是一个典型的案例。
The party encirclement of Hong Kong's free press is also suffocating it. The party's greatest asset currently is enormous financial muscle all over the world. Towards Hong Kong media, they apply the method of offering financial and reputational incentives first to soften up media bosses, encouraging them to self-censor implicitly. If they cannot be bought, then there are other types of pressure that raise to intimidation or even violence. The recent attack on Kevin Lau has all of the hallmarks of this kind of intimidation attack.
香港的媒体自由真正到了最危险的时候，港人该何去何从呢？当然，绝不能相信中共的任何许诺，更不要对中共抱有任何幻想。台湾学生最近发动的太阳花运动，就是港人最好的榜样。
We can't necessarily believe promises that are made to us by the Communist Party. We should not have any illusions. The Sunflower Movement in Taipei of the students occupying the legislature is a good model for Hong Kongers.
自由媒体的力量毕竟是有限的，香港民众应该利用媒体进行鼓动，发起全民的抗议活动，把类似占据中环的街头斗争与立法会内的斗争结合起来，进一步壮大香港的民主声势，最终把北京操纵的特区政府改造成真正由港人普选的政府。谢谢各位。
After all, the power of free media does have its limits. Hong Kong's people should take advantage of their still extant media freedoms, mobilize popular protest, Action in the streets, like Occupy Central, must be united with action inside the Legislative Council to expand the voice and reach of democracy in Hong Kong. And finally, turn Hong Kong's government from one that can be manipulated by Beijing into one that truly represents Hong Kong people through the universal suffrage of one person, one vote. Thank you very much.
So our last comment.
Thank Nick
Yes, of
for his
course.
excellent translation.
Our last commentator will be Tom Kellogg, and then we'll open the floor to questions.
Thanks for this opportunity to speak here today. I realize I made a huge mistake in trying to follow Kang Zhengguo in terms of his remarks, and I love hearing him through Nick's excellent translation, because then I get to experience it twice and experience the richness of it sort of in double time. I love the metaphor of Hong Kong as a wayward mistress who experiences the freedom of abandonment. It's a very, very interesting way to think of Hong Kong. And I would argue that over the past few years, post-1997, that in many ways, Beijing has tried to treat Hong Kong and the people of Hong Kong as sort of a naughty child that needs to be disciplined in order to understand what is, in fact, for its own good. Father knows best, as it were. And I'm going to argue through the course of my remarks that this is, in fact, the wrong approach for Beijing to take for a whole host of reasons. Now, I should also apologize to Nick, because he invited me up here to talk about the role of law in Hong Kong and in protecting media freedom in Hong Kong. And I have to apologize because my own view is that the role of law is relatively limited in terms of what it can do to address the current crisis. And I do think that's the right word, the current crisis in terms of free expression and media freedom in Hong Kong. Obviously, Ms. Yam laid out some of the difficulties that the Hong Kong media are facing, and the fact that Hong Kong journalists themselves are scoring the media freedom environment very low speaks volumes to the current situation. Let me just say a word or two about the political dynamics that I think have led us to this moment, because I do think they illustrate, hopefully, a way out. I think you can trace the current difficulties to 2012 or so, when the central authorities in Beijing felt as though the situation was starting to get a little bit out of hand. It was in the fall of 2012 that you had the Hong Kong government lose in its efforts to push patriotic education. It's no secret that the Hong Kong government was nudged in this effort by the central government in Beijing, and its failure to be able to revise Hong Kong, the content of Hong Kong education, was seen as a very significant blow to Beijing and its interests in Hong Kong. Against that backdrop, happening at the same time, you have a increasing friction among the people of Hong Kong and mainlanders traveling to Hong Kong. You have fairly, and perhaps in most cases unfairly, mainlanders being blamed for certain social, political, and economic dynamics, not least of which are skyrocketing housing prices in Hong Kong. And again, as someone who has many friends living in Hong Kong, I have intimate knowledge of the real estate market in Hong Kong. It is extremely bad, worse than New York, I think it's fair to say. And the market pressures that were brought to bear by those mainlanders trying to buy apartments in Hong Kong is a real phenomenon that has been politicized without doubt. In fact, there was an incident just yesterday in which a mainland family was shopping, I think, in TST and engaged in some behavior that was considered antisocial, of the sort that cannot be discussed in an august forum at Yale University. And so they were surrounded by irate Hong Kongers who were demanding that action be taken, and eventually the police were called in and escorted these people away. That kind of social tension, I submit to you, is unprecedented, at least fundamentally different from the kind of attitude that you would see in the immediate aftermath of the handover in 1997. So those social and political dynamics led Beijing to reshuffle their liaison office in Hong Kong and to place it more directly under the control of the senior leadership in Beijing, obviously signaling that they were going to take over and make sure that things were run properly from here on out. If Hong Kong is the naughty child, then the liaison office as of late 2012 was the nanny who was not getting the job done right. And everyone knows what happens to a bad nanny. She or he is summarily fired and sent packing, which is what happened to the prior liaison office director, who I believe is now party secretary in Gansu. Ask yourself if you'd rather live in Gansu or Hong Kong. I think we all know the answer to that question. And unfortunately, many of the incidents that some of the prior speakers mentioned, I think, stem from the decision at that time to take a harder line on the situation in Hong Kong, not limited to media, but certainly media first and foremost. It was the opinion of some in Beijing that the patriotic education push lost because the Hong Kong media misled, quote unquote, the people of Hong Kong into misunderstanding the importance and the benefits of patriotic education. So this issue had to be addressed. And you had a series of incidents, most of which I think have already been mentioned, so I won't run through them again. But let me just talk a little bit about the different tactics that have been used over the past year or two since that transition in the Hong Kong liaison office. You have political pressure being brought to bear on different newspapers, editors, journalists, and others. In fact, the most recent Hong Kong Journalists Association report on free expression in Hong Kong documents phone calls directly from the Hong Kong liaison office to Henry Lee, the owner of the Hong Kong Economic Journal, one of the tycoons that Ms. Yan was speaking about. He is the son of Li Ka-shing, and so for him, $10 million truly is pocket change. He was pressured directly by the liaison office to tone down the Economic Journal's coverage of the 2012 chief executive elections. And according to the Journalists Association report, journalists were then told in the months following to tone down their coverage of the new chief executive. Another tactic that's being used, of course, currying favor with owners. If it's not the stick, it's the carrot. So as we know, a very high percentage of media owners are members of the CPPCC, one of the hardest acronyms in Chinese law and politics. And a precious few are also, I believe, members of the MPC, which is quite prestigious, as we all know. So this stick effect, again, plays to the attempts by media owners to exert influence over Chinese politics writ large, and they know that if they allow their media outlets to report too hard-hitting news on certain Hong Kong and mainland issues, that the very influence that they're attempting to win through these media outlets will be lost. Of course, we have the dismissals and the physical attacks on journalists and editors, and the attack on Chen Ping, Jimmy Lai, Kevin Lau, and most recently two Hong Kong morning news executives. I think all of these cases have been mentioned, so I won't go into details on them, but obviously these physical attacks speak for themselves in terms of the seriousness of the situation. So given this dynamic, what to do? I would submit to all of you that in terms of political pressure, in terms of political influence buying through CPPCC, you can see it's tough, appointments is difficult to combat through legal measures. And so therefore other measures are needed. Having said that, law does have its place. And I personally feel that we can justifiably have some degree of confidence in the courts of Hong Kong in terms of vigorously defending free speech rights if and when such cases come to them. But my prediction is that their role will be limited in terms of responding to this crisis in press freedom that we're seeing play out in Hong Kong right now. The other role for law is, of course, vigorous prosecution of those who are carrying out these attacks, and that is where the Hong Kong government's record thus far is rather disappointing. As we all know, most of the people who have carried out these attacks have not been brought to justice, although arrests have been made in some of the cases that we are discussing here today, including the Kevin Lau case. So the Hong Kong government could do a better job here. It has the legal tools to do a better job, and it should be pushed by relevant voices both in Hong Kong and in the international community to do more. Having said that, I do think the primary solutions are political and social rather than legal. And what do I mean by that? Of course, the civil society in Hong Kong will have to play the lead role in terms of pushing the Hong Kong government, one, to do what it can to investigate and to stop attacks before they happen, and two, to stand up to Beijing and say this kind of activity, bringing people from Guangzhou into Hong Kong to attack journalists, is simply unacceptable. And the only actor that can play that role vis-a-vis Beijing is the Hong Kong SAR government, and there is more that they could do there. So that is a key element. For those of us in the international community, we need to remain seized on Hong Kong. The situation in China is obviously very difficult, and for those of us who are professional China watchers, the goings-on in Beijing and across China take up the vast majority of our time. But now is a moment, in fact, to paying more attention to Hong Kong and to be asking U.S. government, European governments, UK government, what they can be doing and what they are doing to make sure that they are raising these issues with the Chinese authorities. I'll close just by restating, like a good academic, restating my conclusion, which is to say, I do truly believe that a change in approach is in Beijing's own interests, because the time in which intimidation and attempts to silence people will actually achieve political victory in Hong Kong, I think, are over. I actually think those times are coming to an end on the mainland as well, but that is not our topic for discussion today. And so Beijing will not achieve what seems to be its goal of greater political influence in Hong Kong through the use of these extra-legal tools. And so it too would benefit from backing off, from recommitting to a true high degree of autonomy for Hong Kong, and letting Hong Kongers rule Hong Kong. With that, I welcome.
Thank you very much, Nick. We will now take questions from the floor and from the email. Please identify yourselves and, okay, and And as soon as we have either questions there or questions one panelist to others, maybe, Shirley, would you like to say anything towards the panelists or throw out a question to the audience?
Well, my questions will be how the U.S. that would be the press freedoms of Hong Kong. As I was given the impressions by several journalists that it's not really a big deal compared with what's going on in the mainland, but how actually the local, I mean the U.S. community see the thing.
Does anyone want to follow that up or comment? Yes, in the back. Or-
Alvin Chung, NYU School of Law, non-practicing member of the Hong Kong Bar. Just to follow up on Ms. Yam's comments, one of the things I've encountered in the U.S. In the course of my studies here, talking to some China watchers, is there's a very strong sense that absolutely nothing is wrong. And it's very, very difficult, I find, for us, Hong Kongers, people with experience of Hong Kong or who followed events in Hong Kong, to actually impart the message that it's not all roses. It's not in fact an open economy, as the AEI would have you believe. It's controlled by a handful of oligarchs. And there is actually a very big problem here. So how exactly do we get the message across would be my primary question for the panel.
I think it goes to you.
This is a very important question. I think there are two parts to it. The first part, vis-a-vis the U.S. government, I think there is a political and educational work to be done. As I think you sort of hinted at, even among China watchers in the United States, there is almost sort of excessive specialization on certain issues related to China, and in some cases, by no means all, the level of knowledge in terms of what's going on in Hong Kong on a day-by-day, week-by-week, year-by-year basis can sometimes be quite low. So I think, the fact that Martin Lee came to New York and Washington to give talks on the current situation in Hong Kong was hugely helpful, and probably more of that is needed. Now, we know we were talking before this panel about the fact that there were sort of political attacks in some of the Beijing papers on Martin after he got back to Hong Kong, and that is unfortunately utterly predictable. And other pro-democratic politicians will face similar dynamics if they choose to engage in the U.S., but such engagement is vitally necessary, both from a political and educational perspective. Just briefly on Europe and the U.K., I think both Europe and the U.K. have tried at various points in time to wave a white flag vis-a-vis China and human rights issues, to signal to Beijing that they are no longer going to engage in any but the most token way on human rights issues. And that is deeply unfortunate. And if there were ways that voices from Hong Kong could try to convince, especially the UK vis-a-vis Hong Kong, where it has a special responsibility for obvious reasons, to rethink this policy, I think that would be hugely helpful.
Yeah.
Let me Okay.
Jump in.
Let me also add that on the China side, if I have to compare the current situation to 2003, when the Article 23 debate was going on, probably the situation today is much more unfriendly towards this kind of discussions by the mainland government. Of course, back in 2003, it was not easy, but relatively speaking, the political atmosphere was much less harsh on dissent than now. So I view what is happening in Hong Kong more like a result or an indication of which way the mainland politics is going. Yeah. I know this sounds very general, so sorry I cannot be too specific on this, but.
香港大概在10几年、20年以前，这个反共的刊物非常多，但是由于这个资金的问题，现在大概只剩下3个：征明、前哨和开放。这个反共工业现在就慢慢的萧条了。如果要问美国怎么支持，我想只能是像民主基金会这样有这个 foundation 这些可以给他一些办杂志的经费能够维持下去，或者使这个这种杂志会更多一些。
Previously, 20 or 30 years ago, Hong Kong had a very rich media scene of magazines that were willing to publish critical commentary on what was happening in mainland China. There's a lot less financial support for that kind of thing now because it's not as good business as it used to be. So from the American side, foundation-style support for media projects that are willing to do this even when it's not profitable would be worthwhile.
Jeff.
My name's Jeff Alexander. I'm a sociologist here. I'm also doing a book on the crisis of journalism in the West right now. As you know, there's a giant problem in terms of the digital revolution causing newspapers to go bankrupt, and almost 40% of, there's about 40% reduction in the number of journalists employed in the United States over the last decade. At any rate, one of the questions I have is how Hong Kong civil society is mobilizing around this issue. I know that it has the capacity to do that and around certain events. I certainly am convinced by the panel that this is a gigantically important issue for the future of freedom inside of Hong Kong and for the possibilities of freedom on the mainland. And so is it that Hong Kong people aren't convinced that this is a big issue, that they're concerned more with economic issues, that they're concerned more with autonomy per se, or how does this fit in? Because my view is the US will not save press freedom in Hong Kong. It will have to be the mobilization. This will have to become an issue of social movements and collective consciousness in governments as well.
Perhaps I can add a bit on that. Is the Hong Kong public? Let's put it this way: there's certainly an increasing awareness on what they don't know. I mean, to use to say, you don't know what you don't know. As judging from the turnout of the two recent rallies, one against violence, the other one is against press, the tightening of press control. I mean, it was really well attended. One had more than 6,000 people attend. The other one is about close to 20,000 people. I mean, that is a significant turnout for events organized by the journalists associations, but still we do see the needs of increase in public awareness, in a sense, because you sort of in Hong Kong, while they see the press freedom going down, but at the same time they can still enjoy a large degree of speech freedom. They can say whatever they like on the internet. So for the moment, I would say quite a number of people does not feel, how much has been taken away from them. And so it's preparing a mechanism, the self-censorship monitoring mechanism, where we'll be able to tell the public what has been missing and what has been censored out from the newspaper. And we do think that's going to help.
So another thing I would add to those excellent comments is that in Hong Kong right now, you're sort of facing a perfect storm of all sorts of political, social, and economic issues getting wrapped together. And press freedom is an important part of it, but it's only a part of it. So you have the massive fight, which sadly was beyond the scope of this panel, over the constitutional reform and the process for electing the chief executive. And obviously, Beijing is digging its heels in on what it feels like is its bottom line on that issue. And so that fight is mobilizing civil society in all sorts of ways, and the media issue plays into that. You also have genuine concern over, again, the marriage between elite politics and money, which is becoming more and more apparent, in part because of excellent reporting both by Western journalists and by Chinese journalists. You had Bloomberg, which chose to basically disassemble its award-winning investigative journalism team, in part after they did a fantastic piece documenting where the money is parked for members of the senior leadership, including the current head, Xi Jinping. And some people think it's no coincidence that the attack on Kevin Lau took place less than a month after Ming Bao took part in the ICIJ global investigation on where the assets are being hidden by all sorts of different shadow companies that are tied to Chinese leaders. So this dynamic is also playing in as well, and is playing into this Hong Kong public perception that the fix is in. And that, coming back to Professor Chen's remarks, that Hong Kong is a free and open AEI style, I love that reference, AEI style, AEI. I don't read their stuff regularly, so I forget that. Oh, sorry, the American Enterprise Institute. The notion that Hong Kong was a leading free trader is now very quickly wearing away as all of these political economic deals come into the fore.
Actually, also related to this, probably most people have not paid attention to the possible connection between the worsening media environment, also worsening political environment in Hong Kong on the one hand, yes, and the divestiture or the moving out, the exit by the richest Chinese billionaire Li Ka-shing. So he has been selling his assets on both the mainland and also in Hong Kong, and reinvesting much of his wealth now in Western Europe and also in the U.S. So this is, I don't think this is an accident. So Mr. Li has realized that things have changed on the mainland, and things have changed also in Hong Kong. Maybe partly, as Mr. Kellogg mentioned earlier, the real estate prices in Hong Kong have, hit such high levels. But at the same time, all the other issues that we are talking about here are also happening to make him reallocate how his multi-billion dollars of investment capital are divided between Hong Kong and mainland China on the one hand and the developed countries. Yeah.
I'd like to add another piece to this, and also draw everyone's attention to the lead article in the latest issue of China Review. And it's by Joseph Chung from Hong Kong, and the title is, I want to give it exactly, is The Emergence of Radical Politics in Hong Kong, Cause and Impact. And it is a superb paper which documents the growing inequality in terms of jobs, in terms of wages, in terms of the real estate issue, and what this means for people under the age of 30, so that they are deeply engaged in this Occupy movement, and they're taking other steps. So I think that on this question of what's happening to civil society in China, in Hong Kong, a lot is happening, and that doesn't mean they're going to be victorious. But I do, if you're interested in Hong Kong and a really great update, I think Chung's piece does a superb job because he specifically links it to analysis both by Hong Kong political scientists and sociologists, but also to comparative politics. So what does it mean to be mobilizing in a basically a non-electoral economy of polity? But this is, of course, not an authoritarian polity. It's a capitalist, open, non-electoral polity. And of course, there's a case of maybe one, but I don't know, maybe there are more than one case, but this is the one that's in front of us. And so his charge in this article is partly to deal with that challenge, how existing work doesn't. And then your student, Ms. Koo, is one of the people that he talks about. So.
To add to Debbie's comments, how the young ones are acting on that, and to answer the questions about the civil society's power. Actually, in Hong Kong, two interesting cases happened recently. One is about the national education or patriotic education, whatever you call it. The campaign was actually started by a bunch of high school students. The whole incident, the whole campaign was somehow very largely underestimated by the Hong Kong press. So it would be very wrong to say that the campaign against that national education is led by the media. No, it's led by the civil society. I mean, it's them who managed to get tens of thousands of people to rally and camp outside the government headquarters for more than a week. And in another incident about the protections of all monuments in Hong Kong, and also the constructions of a high-speed railway between Hong Kong and mainland China, the press have all underestimated the public sentiment against the two things. And it's all led by the civil society. And in the end, the press was forced to face the reality and pick up the campaign.
Did any questions come in?
香港在97以前和97以后，这个斗争的情况很不一样。在97以前，中共基本上是发动平民和穷人来反对有权势和有钱的人，但97以后的情况完全不一样了，因为以前是为了颠覆港英政府，所以要这样做。那97以后是要维持现在的特区政府，所以中共拉拢联系的都是有钱的人和有权势的人，反而是过去的那些劳工阶层变成了弱势群体。
Another important thing to note is that before the handover in 1997, the Communist Party was very involved with the laboring classes and was using that as a means to try and subvert the Hong Kong authorities as they existed at that time. The post-1997 strategy has been one of cultivating the very wealthiest tycoons to try and support the Hong Kong government more against, I guess, aspects of civil society.
那么现在香港不仅仅是 北京的权力越来越和上层的香港人结合在一起，而且从大陆来的有权势的人也移居在那里，和他们在更大的一个范围内结合在一起。我觉得这是现在中共推行全球化战略的一个最大的共识。这个共识，我想美国也是这样，也是和美国的在中国做生意有利益的人也联系在一起。
And there is, I'll translate liberally here, there is a sense in which Hong Kong is the canary in the mine shaft for institutions elsewhere in the world, in the sense that the authorities in the mainland send a lot of money and attention to to people in Hong Kong with influence, with a mind to influencing events, as well as encouraging the migration of all kinds of mainlanders, which may have political consequences. And it's something that this kind of migration and influencing is not something that would necessarily be restricted to Hong Kong at a personal or a business level. 差不多了。
我发现现在香港的民主党和普通的人，他们一直在揭发议会中潜伏的地下党，包括现在的特首，就是一个被揭发出来的地下党。所以不管怎么说，在香港，一个官员，一个有权势的人，一个有威望的人，一旦被揭发出来和北京有勾结，或者说本身就是一个地下党，他的声誉就会低落。所以香港人民的这个斗争应该多发现这样一些地下党或者有地下党嫌疑的人。
And by way of background, I'll add that there is officially no Communist Party in Hong Kong. However, there are all kinds of ways to exert influence. And so, for example, the current chief executive has had to deny repeatedly that he is a Communist Party member. And still, many people don't believe him. And so, the people of Hong Kong who are concerned with issues like this should try to pay close attention to the ways in which they're being influenced.
Nick, do you want to read the question? We do have a question from, it's from Mingbao itself, from a reporter at Mingbao. Do you want to read it? 'Cause you're
Yeah, a reporter from Mingbao, Manson Kin, has asked if we do maintain press freedom in Hong Kong media, what is the value for foreigners? Are foreigners more able to study the real China from Hong Kong's, I guess, Chinese language media? And in the views of the foreign community, do they make a clear distinction between the Chinese and the Hong Kong media?
So I'll just take the first, of course. Yes. That's a simple answer to a more complicated question, but I think people in this room, at least, are very, very clear that the media of Hong Kong is independent and distinct from what we would get from China. That doesn't mean it can't be influence from China on what's published in Hong Kong, but we do presume these are two different media systems. Do you think that's fair, Nick? Why don't you speak first? Tell him.
I wholeheartedly agree, and thank you, Mr. Kin, for writing in and for your important question, and obviously keep up the fight at Mingbao. It's difficult to overstate the role that Hong Kong plays for China watchers. We're all there on a regular basis talking to folks who are based there and have the political space available to be thinking about, writing about, and talking about Hong Kong and mainland China in a way that is much more difficult to do in Beijing. So Hong Kong's role and the role of the Hong Kong media is vitally important, certainly first and foremost for the people of Hong Kong, but also for those of us in the United States who are looking at these issues as a means to pay the rent and put food on the table. So
may I add a bit to that? Is Hong Kong as a China watcher not just because of the freedom we're enjoying, but in fact, I mean, I am a financial journalist. Let's talk about what happened in the financial world. Say most of the influentials in China conduct their business through Hong Kong because for all sort of reasons, and it's much more easy for a Hong Kong journalist to have access to those information. Say, for example, we can by doing a company search, you can help in locating the wealth of different influential people, and that's why Ming Pao was invited by ICIJ to join the investigation. It's because of the access to the information and knowledge about China as well. But what really worries us is somehow the Hong Kong government is trying to jeopardize the Hong Kong press power in that sense. They say, for example, they tried to change the company law, which makes it impossible for the Hong Kong press or, in fact, any members of the public to get to know who are the directors of a company. And it's only after vigorous fights that they agreed to shelve that law. And at the same time, that was done. The law that they just proposed was in the name of privacy, and also in the name of privacy, they're introducing the stalking law, which will bar journalists from following anyone. But at the same time, all this was done in the name of privacy. But at the same time, they have consistently refused to introduce an Information Act or an Archive Act, which will define how the government should provide and should collect and to protect information about a public. Which means, for example, if Debbie, you have a company operating in Hong Kong and you ask the government for a particular folder on Debbie and Company, what sort of record they have on you, the government can easily come and told you that, oh, sorry, the folder was once there, but it has now been destroyed. Your question will be, why is it destroyed? Oh, we don't have an archive law. We don't have a particular policy on how that sort of folder should be handled. So it's about how they were taking away the power of the press with new law, while refusing to protect our existing law or to give us new empowerment.
Is there any more questions? Yes. There's another question from you from Hong Kong, from Eunice Lam, a writer and columnist. Recently, Hong Kong newspapers and magazines have been cutting back in circulation and staff, which means fewer news reports. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that one country, two systems will work as intended? Many Hong Kong citizens fear it isn't.
I'll give it a go, but I'm always batting leadoff on these questions. Part of Ms. Lam's question may be related to the economics of journalism in Hong Kong. And interestingly, I've heard from some of the mainland journalists that I know that the economic picture for mainland newspapers is also starting to deteriorate. And that may have real repercussions for the media picture in China as well. Now, obviously, sitting here in the United States, we're all very familiar with difficult economics of real journalism. I think the figure was given of 40% of journalism jobs having disappeared over the last decade. That's a shocking figure. One shudders at the notion that a place like Trenton, New Jersey, with a rich history of political corruption, would not have that many journalists covering state politics. Obviously, Washington will always have way too many journalists than it could possibly use. But many of the other state capitals in the United States are facing very real difficulties in this area, and we may see similar dynamics play out both in China and Hong Kong, and this is above and beyond the very real political dynamics that we are discussing here today.
Well, the interesting things in Hong Kong is that they are not exactly cutting. I mean, the numbers of journalists have increased and have actually increased because of the new TVs and the new newspapers that come up. But at the same time, we are seeing advertisements of more critical newspaper being pulled. I mean, recently, a very telling case is of AM 730, which is a free tabloid in Hong Kong. Its owner wrote in his column that all mainland affiliated corporations pulled the advertisement simultaneously in November 2013. This is the sort of things we are seeing for the critical paper or those who refuse to yield in. This is happening to them, and it's also same thing is also happening to Apple Daily, and the result is of them cutting down the number of staff. So the total has not dropped, but some has dropped.
I think we have time for one more question, either from the floor or from email.
The floor first? No.
If there's none, Nick has one that's come in Chinese.
Oh, this is another.
No, you can, would you
it's
choose
the
which
same,
one?
It's the same. Oh, I wrote it in English for you. It's equivalent. This is your question.
Mm-hmm.
Should I read it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry. We have a junior editor from Ming Pao's Culture supplement, who's watching from Hong Kong, who has a question for Shirley Yam and perhaps the other panelists. As an experienced reporter, do you feel that the current level of media freedom in Hong Kong, how does it compare historically? Is it really at the lowest level now in your experience? Or have there been other, I guess, dips? And
Well, that certainly is the lowest that I've experienced, in a sense that now journalists nowadays, when they write certain topics and in phrasing their wordings, they will have to think about what not to say and what to say. A simple example being there is an informal survey on the headlines of Hong Kong Economic Journal ever since the famous phone call by the liaison office officials in Hong Kong, which is just mentioned by Tom. A very impartial word, which is CY Leung, that is the name of our chief executive. It used to appear about 100 times in the first half of 2012 of that newspaper, the Hong Kong Economic Journal. It reduced to about 20 to 30 something in the second half of 2012. And it has dropped further down to only about 10 in 2013, the first half of 2013. That is a very interesting indicator on what's going on in the paper. Why is the headlines, why is the word CY Leung not appearing? I mean, given that he's our chief executive, and that's quite telling on what's going on. And when you think about that, I mean, people love to say that, oh, it's even worse during the colonial time. But I was thinking about, I'm sure we're still allowed to mention the governor's name in the headline in the colonial time, isn't it?
Okay. I think I wanted to thank Shirley from, I hope it's coming through. It's broken up here. We want to thank you for making this possible, having you as the anchor the beginning and closing now. I think has made this a particularly special occasion for us, and I want to join, hope just the panel and the audience to thank you for staying up till 2 a.m. in the morning to join us here in New Haven. So thank you all for coming, but particularly thank you to Shirley Yam.